Thanks to the doctors working vigorous hours on the front lines, NASCAR's longest and most patriotic race will take place this Memorial Day. As the garages reopened up, it appears there won't be many patriotic designs for this Sunday's Coca Cola 600. Now, there are some awesome paint schemes, but I'd expect a lot more to be unveiled during July's Brickyard 400. Unfortunately, that means the 2020 video is postponed for the time being. However, my patriotism hasn't diminished. And with that said, there are years upon years of spectacular patriotic schemes to review and in this case rank on a predefined scale. Thus, it's time to ignite a new Memorial Day tradition to review some red, white, and blue paint schemes honoring America. For the first edition, we're going to start out with some of the greatest schemes from the Gen 4 era. So obviously, the first rule of tier ranking is you have to set the ranks for which schemes will be placed. So the first, you have the Act of Treason tier. You could pretty much say any non-patriotic design in the Coca Cola 600 should fall into this trap. Fortunately, the windshield banners honoring the fallen soldiers have bailed out some of those unwilling to show their true colors. As for most patriotic schemes, you can tell they at least showcase red, white, and blue. Therefore, this tier won't be utilized much. Then you have the tier for the lazy and oftentimes uninspiring patriotic designs. You question the mere existence of these paint schemes and how much better off they'd be if they tried something different. Hence, this is known as the Vietnam tier. Next is one I call status quo. These are tiring and often reused designs you've seen on multiple occasions. Not that these designs are terrible, but there's just too many flaws and they just don't stand out from the rest. Then the second highest tier is the Firecracker tier. When you set up your lawn chair to take in a fireworks show, you're typically always in for a treat. There are a few flaws, but in the end, the fireworks show on that hot summer night showcases the glories and wonders of America. And then you have, of course, the best of the best. The paint schemes that make you proud to be an American and cherish the wonders and land of the free. A lot of these designs go above and beyond. It's just spectacular to look at from a distance. Therefore, this highest honor is dubbed the Patriotism on Wheels tier. So with the boundaries set, let's get into the paint schemes to rank on this edition. So leading off is arguably the Uncle Sam of NASCAR racing, Dale Earnhardt. The Intimidator would trade his traditional Darth Vader look to commemorate the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. This would be the one and only time the GM Goodwrench Monte Carlo would adorn such a look. And like its predecessor in the All-Star race, this would start a trend of more American flag-style patriotic designs. And most certainly looking at this scheme, it incorporates red, white, and blue America perfectly. But I would say the one standout element is definitely the silver number. My only problem with this scheme is they could have added some more stripes on the hood, but after that, it is such a great design that debuted in the 1996 All-Star race. Definitely in the Firecracker tier. Dale Jr. would carry the family legacy 4 short years later. Now from a distant glance in the Bristol grandstands, this looks like Jr.'s standard Budweiser number 8 with the iconic DEI stripes. However, Anheuser-Busch made this car unique by replacing the black with American blue. And add in a few stars and you have Dale Jr.'s 2000 Bristol Night Race paint scheme. Now, you guys probably assume this is going to be in the Vietnam tier, but honestly, the tweaks work well with the standard colors. Less is more in rare cases, and in the case of the Budweiser number 8, they didn't need to completely overhaul the primary design to come up with the perfect patriotic scheme. In fact, I definitely take this over the overrated 2007 design. A bit of gold would have ranked it higher, but it's a great patriotic scheme on its own. Like father, like son, Firecracker tier it goes. Speaking of paint schemes from the new millennium, we have this Valvoline design from Mark Martin. And now we all know Valvoline has the red, white, and blue, so how could the Roush designers go above and beyond? Well, that was showcased during the 2000 Pepsi 400 with an American flag stretching on the side of the car. The thing I find most cool about this paint scheme is that they barely did anything compared to the original design. So for anyone that was a Mark Martin fan during that time, they could still distinguish his car from the one he usually ran, but then they added the American elements and that really made this car stand out. I mean, just looking at it, there are absolutely no flaws that I can see with this paint scheme, so honestly, I gotta put this one in the Patriotism on Wheels tier. Either Alex Bowman or Roush should seriously consider this as a possible Darlington throwback. And when of course you're talking about patriotic schemes, you've got to think back to the iconic schemes Jimmie Johnson and Lowe's ran during the early 2000s. During the 2001 UAW GM Quality 500, a future 7-time champion would get baptized in a NASCAR racing. And synchronizing with the driver, this navy blue Lowe's Chevrolet started the iconic Power of Pride era. Now unfortunately, Jimmie Johnson didn't exactly have the star-spangled numbers with this version, which he would save for the future. But along with the historical value, this simplistic look strongly showcases the biggest element, and that's obviously the American flag. Both versions of the number do its part, and while it may be a little bit generic compared to other cars, this is definitely a clean and simplistic Jimmie Johnson look. Gotta put this one in the Firecracker tier. The 2000 and 2003 schemes were bangers as well. In fact, the 2003 Jimmie Johnson Power of Pride scheme had an insane average finish of 1.0, sweeping the, at the time, Lowe's Motor Speedway clean. The only thing that downgrades these two paint schemes is that they feature a couple minor flaws. If you take the simplicity of the 2002 scheme and incorporate the red of 2003, it would definitely rank in the Patriotism on Wheels tier without a doubt. But nonetheless, both are awesome paint schemes, and I'm going to put both in the Firecracker tier as they're both some of the better Jimmie Johnson paint schemes of the Power of Pride era. Another legendary patriotic matchup was Michael Waltrip and NAPA. Every year during his tenure at DEI, he would run a patriotic scheme for the Firecracker 400. This all started with this design during the 2001 Pepsi 400, a car most notable for pushing Dale Jr. to victory. This car would also race a lot of the latter races of 2001 in the wake of 9/11. And now, looking at this car, it's not perfect. They probably could add a couple more stars, but the thing that's awesome is that I like the red and white that goes along the side of the car. A little bit repetitive, but with the colors of NAPA, this car really fits. So I gotta put this one once again in the Firecracker tier. Coming back to Daytona for the 2002 Pepsi 400, the roles would be reversed for DEI. This time it was Michael Waltrip taking his patriotic NAPA Chevrolet Monte Carlo to victory lane. He did so sporting this striped red and blue design. Now looking at this car, very similar to 2001, I think there's a minor flaw here. I certainly think this car could use a little bit more white. But overall, I like what they did with the red roof, and I think the simplistic stripes on the side, it's just a standout element, especially with the NAPA blue. So once again, this one goes in the Firecracker tier. In my opinion, Michael Waltrip's 2003 design was definitely the peak of his cars at DEI. There's a good mixture of red, white, and blue, but honestly my favorite part is how they utilized the DEI stripes in the way of the American flag. Obviously, the stripes scream DEI, and to put it in this way definitely makes this car stand out amongst the rest. So honestly, with their creativity, I've got to put this one in the Patriotism on Wheels tier. It was something new and unique, and this is definitely the best Michael Waltrip scheme here in the NAPA era. Unfortunately, the last two DEI NAPA designs were kind of misfires in my opinion. Both of these cars didn't have a direction, which you could see from the render to the actual car on the track. The flaw with 2004 relied with they tried to combine the 2001 scheme and tried to incorporate the DEI stripes. It looked absolutely ugly on the renderings, which they ultimately fixed for the 2004 running. But in the end, they just couldn't replicate the magic of that scheme, and this scheme looks just really weird. And then you had the 2005 scheme, which was pretty much the 2003 car with a gradient. And then the roof. The original roof on this car looked bad. Now ultimately they changed it for the race, but I felt like this was just another car that just didn't look very good. Unfortunately, I've got to place both of these in the Vietnam category. Another misfire was Terry Labonte's 2004 Olympics paint scheme. Now, of course, from the patriotic state of Texas, you figured Terry Labonte would get to drive a USA paint scheme eventually down the road. And that was the case during the 2004 Pennsylvania 500, which was one of his better finishes in his doomful 2004 campaign. But as for this patriotic design, the white hood absolutely kills any momentum this paint scheme has. If they would have made it red, it would have looked 100 times better, and it could have been in the Firecracker tier. So pretty much in the end, they made the hood abstinent from the rest of the paint scheme, and it definitely kills the momentum this paint scheme was having. So this one's going in the Vietnam tier with the latter Michael Waltrip schemes. So with that, let's get back onto some good paint schemes. Despite nearly a decade at NASCAR's top level, Jeff Gordon hadn't showcased a patriotic design on his neon yellow 24. That would all change during year 2 of Pepsi's primary sponsorship. And in looking at this paint scheme, Pepsi definitely showcases its iconic logo with its patriotism really well. Having blue as the background and then having the red and white stripes just makes it absolutely fantastic. And then you even have fireworks on the hood. Unfortunately, the thing holding this paint scheme back is the neon reddish orange valance and spoiler. It just doesn't fit with this car, and it would have looked much better if they would have made this neon yellow like the original diecast and the render has. Still a great paint scheme, but they could have done just a little bit more to get into that elite tier of patriotic designs. In a nutshell, 2002 Kevin Harvick was pretty much the typical RCR letdown season. But while he struggled on the scoreboard, his silver, orange, and black Goodwrench Chevrolet was among the best cars on a regular basis. Therefore, Richard Childress made minor tweaks to tribute the 1-year anniversary of 9/11. The American flag replaced the GM Goodwrench logo with the slogan, "God Bless America," taking up the TV panel. And I must say, I love how this fits with the main paint scheme. The way the American flag is showcased compared to some of the other designs really makes it stand out. My only gripe with this car is you could replace the neon orange with red, and honestly, by doing that, it would have made the Patriotism on Wheels tier. But still, this scheme's a solid 9 out of 10, one of the more underrated patriotic designs that I've ever seen. From racing royalty, we have the Georgia Pacific Dodge of Kyle Petty. I know, somewhere cooped up in my childhood collection, I have the 164 of this car that changes color. But getting rid of the nostalgia, unfortunately there are a couple flaws with this paint scheme. I think it would look more simplistic if the front were all white. Definitely the Georgia Pacific logo is the one conflicting with the blue stars and stripes, and it creates a weird triangle around the logo. I mean, it's not bad, it's not the absolute worst thing to look at, but it could have been a hell of a lot better in the land of the free. As a federal constitutional republic, nothing showcases the power of the United States more than the right to vote. Therefore, for the 2004 Auto Club 500, Rusty Wallace adorned this Vote Miller as the President of Beer's paint scheme. A massive sheet metal which would be mangled after a lap 58 crash with Kurt Busch. Fortunately, this design would get redemption during the 10 Days of Thunder, finishing in the top 10 for both the All-Star Race and the Coke 600. As for the design, similar to most Miller schemes, they refrain from overdoing it. It has a few stars, stripes, and a clean logo modeling most voting stickers you see on the back bumper of most vehicles. I would say this is definitely the gold standard of what a Miller patriotic scheme should look like. Unlike whatever the hell this was supposed to be from 2016. This one definitely goes in the Patriotism on Wheels tier. And rounding out this wave is 2 very successful paint schemes from Greg Biffle's breakout 2005 season. The first is of course the traditional National Guard Ford, which Greg Biffle did most of his winning in. Now, it's closely modeled off of Dale Earnhardt's 1996 scheme, which you could say puts it in the status quo tier, but the thing that makes it really stand out has to be that iconic neon yellow. The only second thought is maybe gold would look better, but most certainly it's one of the better paint schemes in terms of Greg Biffle. And then finally you have the Posted scheme, in which Greg Biffle raced to 2 victories at Auto Club and then Texas. And looking at this car, this is a star-spangled banger. I mean, just how the white gradients into the blue is just absolutely phenomenal. And then the thing that makes this transition absolutely perfectly has to be the red stripes. Unlike some of the other designs on this list, they did it in a creative way, and it really stands out and works on this car. And then finally you have that neon yellow that makes it a standout element for this Ford Taurus. I'm telling ya, every time Greg Biffle had to drive this car, he must have felt an extra sense of pride with this paint scheme. I've got to put this one in the Patriotism on Wheels tier, as it's one of the better looking paint schemes here of the 2000s. So there you have it, some of the most notable NASCAR Patriotic schemes tier ranked on a broad scale. Now I know I missed out on a couple of them, but if this video does well enough, then surely there will be more installments in the near future. So anyways, this is NRF signing out, and just remember, life's a beach and then you drive.